Hi, welcome to Woodcraft Spokane. Hope your Saturday's great. Joel and I have been tasked with doing some marking and measuring. We could spend hours and hours and hours on marking and measuring and all the different tools and gadgets. What I gathered up was some of the stuff that I probably use most commonly in my cabinet shop and probably the stuff that we most commonly sell around here. So the first thing that everyone thinks about with marking and measuring, of course, is tape measures, squares, fractions, half inches, inches. Sometimes it can be simpler than that. And we're going to start out by talking about a story stick. So Joel, can you see these notches on this picture frame right here?
Come in and take a look.
So what about if I needed to reproduce those exact notches on another piece of wood and didn't want to take the time to measure those out every time? I can come up with what's called a story stick. A story stick, I'll come over and I can line up my notches with that, and voila, I have the story of this board right here. So that's kind of an old school way of doing it. A lot of times when I'm out doing something that's going to be repetitive, like we're building furniture and the layout for the molding's the same thing, you can spend a lot of time getting a tape measure in and out of your pocket. We'll just go ahead and draw up story sticks like this, and we can bring them right to the edge of a board and nail in our cross molding in that so that it's on the exact same spot and never have to take and touch a tape measure. So that's the first marking and measuring tool that we use a lot in the shop, and that's just making story sticks. Let's talk about a tape measure. There's obviously all kinds of different tape measures. There's everything from your pocket purse tape measure all the way to these big monsters things that may have 100 yards worth of tape on them and that. The tape measure that I carry in my shop is the Fastcap. It's the lefty-righty. The reason I like this tape measure right here, and I don't know if Joel can zoom in on that, is because as I'm getting older and I'm always seeming to be in a hurry, this breaks down for me the fractions. So what I mean by that, and I'm going to use my pencil as a pointer, if I need to measure 5 1/16, there's a number 1 right there. That's 5 1/16. So let's say that I need to take 5 1/16 and I need to add 3 7/16 to it. I can come over here and go 5, see 8. Now I'm at 8 1/16 and I'm adding my 7/16. I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I know what my exact measurement is. That's why I like these lefty-righties. I can come from either side of a board and they work. So this is a tape that I've been using for years. And right up front, I'm not a math guy. I don't like math. So the simpler that I can keep the math on my marking and measuring, the easier it is for me. And there is times, absolutely, where you just saw me count out 7 or 8. For you math whizzes, you're probably thinking, well, a 16th plus 7/16. I know what that is. So this is why I use this tape measure. So let's get into some actual marking. So we've barely touched on the measuring stuff. Let's talk about some marking. This is a pencil that we sell here at Woodcraft. It was introduced to me a couple months ago by a Finnish carpenter here in Spokane. And he said, man, you'll love them. I've been using these things for years. So I went ahead and I bought one of these pickas. We sell them here as you see it. And then we sell the lead replacements, and we actually sell color lead. The couple things that I like about these is I can take, as this lead gets dull, And I can put it right in the end of the holder that comes with it, and it's got a little sharpener in there. So I'm keeping my pencil sharp immediately as I lose the tip on it. It's easy to change the lead. I'm just pushing my button. I can pull that lead in and out. Again, I can put color lead in it. The other thing that I like about these is they will go right into a shirt pocket, vest pocket, apron, whatever it is that you carry. So this was one of the things that, again, over the last couple of months, I have to have it in my pocket. It's kind of a go-to for me now as far as what I use for pencils. You can go to a grocery store, the dollar store, get these anywhere. Again, it's a simplistic pencil. I've got a couple colored pencils up here too. So where does that come into play? Let's say that we're using mahogany, or in this case, we're using a little Purple Heart. And what I need to do is I need to come and measure this. And I want to make my mark at 5 inches. I can take this colored pencil, which happens to be white, make my mark, and you're going to see it. If I take and use a regular ink pencil, or a regular lead pencil, pretty hard to see. So that's where these colored pencils come into place. Again, we have refills that go into our Pinnacle systems that are in white. I get these actually at a fabric store here in Spokane. They have multiple different colors on that, so I'm able to pick them up there. This is basic chalk, so if we're rough, let's say we're bringing in this board and there's been no milling done to it, we're able to write. If I'm doing the measure up and marking, I can write to my cut guy, go 7 1/4 wide, and I'll put an S on it. What that means to him is he's cutting this to 7 1/4 wide skinny. So that's what we like about that system. We have our own vocabulary. I guess we'll use skinny, we'll use fat. He knows exactly what I'm looking for when we're doing the skinny and fat thing. So that is your basic pencil, colored pencils. One of the things I like here too is I went to a hobby store and I was able to find a good white eraser. I don't know if you've ever tried to use just a plain pencil eraser on wood. It seems to smudge up all the time. It's hard to get the marks off of it. But if I take this white one, and an artist friend of mine actually said, hey, try the white erasers. I get that result out of it just like that. So again, small little thing, but stuff that we've learned over the years. So as we talk about marking, maybe I want to take and not use a pencil or anything. What about if I take and use my marking knife? I'm doing the same thing. All I'm doing is taking my knife point and making a little tick right there. So I know some of the old school guys, they don't carry pencils or that. They're going to carry a marking knife. It can be used as a layout tool anywhere. One of the things that I do like using it for is if I've got my square right here, I can take and hold my square with pressure. I can come with my marking knife right across there. There I have my cut line right there. So that's where a marking knife comes into place. We have 2 or 3 different styles and options that are available for you here at Woodcraft. This is another tool that's just a marking tool. So let's say that I need to go, I want to go 1 inch marks, and I want to consistently be 1 inch. I can take this, go like this, and come back and come straight across here like this. Let's go to an end I haven't marked on. I'm holding it flat. I'm holding it across. It's got a little cutting wheel on it. And you can see that I've made a mark right here, which works as the same thing as a pencil line. So that's another tool that can be used for marking. This is another old school tool that can be used for marking. The idea behind it is kind of the same thing. I'm going to hold it tight against the edge, run the fence, and there's my line that I'm going to cut. You can see that this rips more than that wheel cuts. That's probably what I don't like about it. But what I do like about it is if I'm laying out dovetails, on one side of this comes a single pin. On the other side of this comes the double pin. The double pin is what we use to lay out dovetails. So again, just another way of marking. So then some of the other tools that we use pretty consistently, and it's a tool that I carry in my pocket. There's 2 of them all the time. I don't wear a apron in my shop. I would usually wear a vest. And a couple of the tools that I'm never without are this right here. It's called a saddle square. So let's say that I need to, now I'm going to do the cardinal no. I'm going to use ink pen because I'm hoping it shows up a little better. Let's say though that I've got this line right here. So I've got that line. I want to transfer that line down. How do I do that? Well, without having to move my square, I can do that in one procedure. What about if I got my line right here and I want to take and come up with that line? Without moving that, I've got that right there. This little saddle square comes in real handy. We have them here at Woodcraft. This is out of a 3-piece set. Groves makes it. We have this set. You won't see any increment or anything on this square. So how do you measure with it? It's not really designed for measuring, but if I'm walking over to my joiner and let's say I haven't used it in a day or so, or maybe typically, I don't know, when we're trying to move it around the shop, we commit the sin of grabbing the fence to help move it. This way here, I can walk right up to the joiner base, put this right against my fence, and I can make sure I'm square. So you can have a little machinist square like this that doesn't need any sort of incremental marking on it at all. It's designed so that I know if I'm 90. Same thing with my bandsaw. I can walk right up to my bandsaw. I can put this on my table. I can slide that next to my bandsaw blade, and I know that my table is at 90 degrees. So I carry one of these in my pocket too, along with that little saddle square. So a couple of the other tools that we use a lot in the shop, and as I get older and want to cheat a little bit, there's a lot of digital marking tools out there. This particular one comes in a 3-piece set. It will measure in millimeters. It will measure in fractional. So about as simple as can be. We get it down here. We make sure it's zeroed out. We bring it out, and I can measure what the thickness of that is without a lot of work. Or the nice thing about this too is because it's a caliper, digital caliper, I can measure an inside diameter on something too. So let's say that I need to know what the gap is right there. I can come in like this. And now I have an inside measurement on that little gap right there. I'm buying more and more of the digital stuff, and to be honest with you, it's because it's easier for me to read it, it's simpler, it's quicker. So let's talk about a couple other tools that I really like. This is a bevel gauge. So we'll come up with some crazy kind of angles sometimes. How do you match the angle? Well, the easiest way for me to do it is, let's say that there's a line on this bench right here. Okay? So I'm trying to match that line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my bevel gauge right over to here. I don't need to know what that angle is now because I can repeat it with my bevel gauge. So these are a handy tool when you're doing layout, marking, measuring, and that. The sidekick to that is we have 2 or 3 different brands here. This being the general one, that's a digital that'll do the same thing so that you actually get a digital reading. A lot of times, I don't care what the angle is, I just need to be able to reproduce it. And then I can take it over to my miter saw, put this against the fence, line my blade up, and I've reproduced the angle. One of the tough things about marking and measuring sometimes is measuring on the inside of a cabinet. So we come in and we're trying to figure out, well, what's our inside face frame dimension? Because we're figuring out how to, if we're using 1/2-inch overlay hinges, and I've got a 21-inch inside measurement, I know I need to cut my rails and stiles to a certain length and width. So on this is a folding rule. It's old school. What I like about these is they actually fold out. And the one that I have sitting in my shop actually has a little metal slide thing. So I know I can butt it up against the flat here, fold it out to where I'm getting a measurement, and if I need to extend that little metal rule, I can get an exact measurement to what that inside is versus trying to hold a tape there and eyeball it with my eyes. So these old folding rules, they've been around forever. We still use them. So what else do we have over here? We have your basic 6-inch square. I have them in 12s, 6s, and 18s, and 4s in the shop. We use them all the time. So where that little square doesn't have any numbers on it, and I use it for, again, checking fences and that, this one here I can actually do layout work with. So I can take it, and let's say that I need to draw a line at 2. I can go ahead and set it at 2. I can put that along the edge of my board, and I can go ahead and draw at 2. Like that. So that's where the square, this is a starret. We still sell the starrets. This is a quality square. This is one of my go-to tools in the shop. This is what Woodcraft used to sell as a Pinnacle. It's a T-square. What I like about this thing is it's set up fractionally here. These holes are set at 1-inch increments. So what I can do with that is if I want to take, and instead of using my pinning tool for doing shelf pins, I can come over here and I can use this so that I know where I'm drilling to do pins. And so that right there gives me absolute 1-inch layout to do some pins on a shelf. The other thing about this one here, and I don't know if Joel can get in tight enough to see it, but it's also laid out in 16ths on the inside. So what I can do with that is, okay, I need 5 and an 1/8. I come over here to 5, I come to the 1/8, and voila, there's my 5 and an 1/8. So this is a multi-use tool One of the things that I learned pretty early about looking at tools is that you want to buy your rulers, your good squares and that, where they're actually etched. Not just painted marks, but they're actually etched into the metal rule. All your starrets like this, they're going to be etched in. This Pinnacle's etched in. That way, if you get a little bit of glue or the paint starts peeling right there, you still have a solid mark left on that square. I use this T-square a lot. Dominoes. If I'm doing dominoes because I'm edge joining two boards, I can lay this across. I can make my mark right here. And then I know where to line up my dominoes on the two boards that I'm jointing together. This is a set of tools that we have out on the shelf. This is a set of French curves. If I'm doing layout work, and you can see I've got some blue tape on it. So the reason I had blue tape on it is I have a mark right here and here. Then I know as I'm doing repetitive layout work, all I have to do is line that up in the same spot every time. So that gives me the same radius as long as I go between my marks every time. So these French curves, I think they come 4 to a set. I use these for layout all the time, especially when we're doing curve work. This is a tool that a machinist friend of mine introduced to me. He has it in metal. I found it in plastic. Again, it is a angle, helix angle, so that if I want to bring this over to here, and my directions are saying, oh, it's a 70-degree angle, I can come over to here, line it flat to the back side, and I know that right there, I'm at a 70-degree angle based to the back of this flat. So I use this a lot also when we're figuring out angles. Joel, I brought this along, and I've used it before in here. This is an Easy Set by Sommerfeld. Where it comes into play is it's a guide that allows me to preset the height of my router bits. And so that's included in marking and measuring. There's a lot of tools and jigs out there that make things easier to do. I know up there in our manager specials right now, we have a couple different jigs for setting router bit heights, for setting table saw heights. Well, this is still a marking and measuring tool in that if I'm dealing with 3/4 inch plywood, all I have to do is come over here, set my Easy Set to where it says 3/4, and then any one of my Sommerfeld bit sets, I just come over to my table and line it up. So I still consider that marking and measuring, and that's what I mean. We could spend hours and hours. Joel, we've thrown a lot of information out here. Is there any questions so far? Okay, as we start to wrap up, I want to wrap up with a couple more tools. I believe that you should do what you do best. And one of the things that I'll say about the Incra systems is that's their claim to fame. Marking and measuring is kind of what they're known for. I have a couple different Incra ruler sets in that. I know it's really hard to see on this, but there's actual punch outs on this at different measurements, so that if I need to come over here and I need to find 3 1/8, I can come over here and find my 3 1/8 mark, stick my pencil down in there, and voila, I've got a mark at 3 1/8. This here, kind of the same thing that we looked at before. It's going to register 90 degrees for me based off of this edge. So right here, I'm at 90 degrees. But what about if I need to come off a 90, 15 degrees? I can come right over here. It's clearly labeled. And voila, there's my 90 there's my 15 degrees off. So that's some of the advantages of these tools like Incra. They're more of a specialized marking tool. This is back to that old Pinnacle set. I love this thing in that if you can see, it's a triangular gauge built on a triangular gauge. I can unscrew these and I actually get two different triangles. Where this comes into play on this is I can take this and bring it right over to here and make marks out on the edge. So let's say that I want to come in X amount of inches right there. I can do that. I can take and use this as a square. So let's say that I'm measuring out a corner and I know that I need to come up 5 inches. I can come right over to here and there's my 5-inch mark. So that's part of this Pinnacle set. We no longer carry Pinnacle, but we have items that are just like this. And I think, Joel, what I want to wrap up with, Fastcap is another one of those companies that does a lot of specialized this and that, gadgets, call them whatever you want. But they are one of the think tanks, I think, of the woodworking industry. What I like about Fastcap, Joel, is this particular tool, I can use it as a compass, okay? Normal compass, like we're all used to. I can take and come around, get that perfect circle that I need. It's easy to set up. Voila, I've drawn a circle. The other thing that I like about this, and where it comes into place a lot in our cabinet shop, is I install a cabinet in your house, and I promise you, I don't care what you paid for your house, your walls aren't always going to be square. So if we're having to cope a piece of molding or the cabinet to your wall, I can actually take this, run it against the edge, and use the pencil to give me a cope line. And what it'll do is it'll show me maybe how far off that wall is. I can use it for coping molding, where I'm using the point and I'm coming down a piece of molding and I'm following it. Maybe it steps out and comes back in. Maybe it steps out big and comes back in. That's what I like about this little Fastcap. So I know that this is one of them videos where we haven't done a lot of hands-on demo this, demo that. You've heard me talk a lot. There's a ton to be said about this marking and measuring. 90% of the products that I've shown you today, we have out here on the shelf or have something similar to it. We would love you to come in if you have more questions. Ring the phone, shoot Joel an email, whatever we can do to help you with this marking and measuring. It does not have to be the confusion that sometimes it is. There's some pretty cool tools out there that'll help us with some of these processes. If we don't have any questions, we're going to go ahead and call this a Saturday. We appreciate you taking time to check in with us. As always, come into your local Woodcraft here. We'll do everything we can to try to help you. Thank you and have a good week.